scream was swallowed by the wind before it reached the ground. For a moment, the night sky held her, a handcuffed black woman spiraling through the air, city lights flashing beneath her like dying stars. The cops in the helicopter watched her fall in silence, until one of them caught sight of something impossible in the reflection of the glass, her eyes staring back up at them. And that's when the pilot whispered, "She's not the one falling." Asterisk, the city below was a broken constellation of lights, half swallowed by rain. Through the storm, the police helicopter carved its way like a wounded insect, rotors chopping the night, blades cutting through water and wind. The radio hissed with static, interrupted by dispatchers shouting over one another. Somewhere below, hundreds of officers flooded the industrial canals, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. Inside the chopper, 6 officers sat strapped in tight. The air reeked of sweat, cordite, and damp nylon. Every surface vibrated with the rhythm of the storm, a constant low growl that made conversation feel like shouting inside a war zone. "Dispatch, this is Air Unit 3-1, the pilot called out, his voice taut. Negative on the visual. Wind shear's kicking hard east of the refinery. Copy that, 3-1, came the crackled reply. Suspect last seen near Sector 7, Dr. Nilla Pierce. Approach with extreme caution. She's considered armed and unstable." At that name, the cabin tensed. Captain Broderick Kane sat nearest the door, his eyes locked on the city grid below. Broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and built like the last man who'd ever apologize. He didn't move when lightning lit up the cockpit. His jaw worked the same piece of gum he'd been chewing since takeoff. Across from him, Officer Mireya Ortiz adjusted her headset. "Unstable?" she muttered. "She's a psychologist, not a warlord." Kane didn't look up. "You read the file?" "I read enough. She killed the federal agents," Ortiz snapped their necks like twigs. "Or maybe she didn't," Mireya shot back. "That file reads like it was written by whoever needed her gone." The rookie in the corner, Torres, barely 25, rain streaks glinting on his cheek from the open vent, shifted uncomfortably. "You really think she's innocent?" Mireya shrugged. "I think the system doesn't like loud women, especially the smart ones." Kane's hand shot out and grabbed the metal bar above him as the helicopter lurched sideways. "Enough," he snapped. "She's wanted on counts of murder, treason, and theft of classified intel. That's all that matters." The words hung there, heavy, metallic, final, but the wind had other plans. The helicopter shuddered again, lights flickering across the control panel. The GPS blinked, scrambled, then flashed a string of nonsensical coordinates. 0.000. Systems glitching again, the pilot said, tapping the screen. "That's the 3rd time." A whisper broke through the headset, a low, layered sound, soft at first, like a breath too close to the ear. "You've gone too far." The pilot flinched. What's wrong?" Kane barked. "Feedback, sir." But he paused, his face drained. "That was my voice." The cabin went silent except for the wind. The crew exchanged looks, all nerves and disbelief. "Probably just a loop," Mireya said, though her voice wavered. "Happens with old frequencies." But Torres leaned closer to the window, peering down through the sheets of rain. "Wait," he said quietly. "There." At first, no one saw it, just ripples of light on black water. Then a figure emerged, half submerged near a collapsed canal bridge. "Got her," Torres yelled. Movement near the north spillway. Kane was already up. "Bring us down." The helicopter dipped low, rotors kicking up waves and debris. The spotlight cut through the dark, and there she was. Dr. Nilla Pierce. Her white shirt was torn, soaked, plastered to her skin. Mud streaked her face. Her hands were lifted, empty. Her eyes, those dark, intelligent eyes, followed the helicopter without fear. "Suspect visual confirmed," Kane said into his mic. "Stand by for retrieval." 2 officers leaned out the door, ropes snapping taut in the wind. Mireya's gut twisted as they descended, boots splashing into the canal. She watched through the open hatch as they grabbed Nilla, forced her to the ground, and cuffed her roughly. Nilla didn't fight back. She just looked up, straight into the light, and said something Mireya couldn't hear. But the pilot did. She said, "You're not in control." The words unsettled everyone. Minutes later, they had her in the chopper, dripping and silent, cuffed to the rail beside Kane. Up close, Nilla didn't look dangerous. She looked tired. Her face bore no defiance, no madness, just an eerie calm, like someone watching a storm they'd already predicted. Kane knelt in front of her. "Where's the data?" Nilla tilted her head slightly. You wouldn't understand it. Try me. You think it's about information, she murmured, voice smooth as rain. It's about memory. Yours, mine, everyone's. Save it for the lawyers. He stood, signaling the pilot. Get us back to base. The helicopter rose sharply, slicing through another burst of thunder. The cabin rattled. Rain whipped through the open hatch, spraying the faces of the crew. Nilla turned to Myrea suddenly. You shouldn't be here. Myrea frowned. What? She's talking nonsense, Kane barked. Ignore her. But Nilla didn't stop. Her gaze was sharp, focused entirely on the female officer. You tried to report them once, she said softly. Didn't you? The words hit Myrea like a slap. How? Nilla smiled faintly. You remember the warehouse. The shipment. The one that vanished from the evidence log. Myrea's throat closed. She hadn't told anyone about that case, not even internal affairs. How do you? The cabin lights blinked off, then on again. The radio screamed with static dot, then silence. The pilot turned in confusion. We just lost comms. The GPS blinked again, flashing symbols none of them recognized. Kane snapped. Get it back online? But the pilot was pale, sweat beading his temple. Sir, we're not showing coordinates. Just this. He pointed at the screen. A loopy phrase scrolled across the monitor. Do you remember the fall? For a moment, no one spoke. Then a deep metallic creak echoed through the helicopter, like something twisting under its own weight. The lights flickered again. Torres screamed. Myrea turned and saw the cuffs binding Nilla's wrists unlocked. No one had touched them. King drew his weapon instantly, shouting over the roar. Hands where I could see them. Nilla didn't move. You already threw away your safety, she said. You just haven't noticed yet. Shut up. King roared. Lightning exploded across the sky, flooding the cabin with white light. For a split second, the reflection of the crew shimmered in the window, except one was missing. Kane spun. Where the hell is? Torres was gone. His headset clattered to the floor. The open hatch swung wildly in the wind. Kane lunged for the door, peering into the rain. Nothing. No fall. No splash. Just the endless black swirl of the storm below. Jesus Christ. The pilot gasped. He didn't. Keep flying. Kane barked. Myrea's heart pounded. She turned to Nilla, who sat motionless amid the chaos. Her wet hair clung to her face, her lips barely moving. What did you do? Myrea whispered. Nilla's voice was almost kind. You'll understand soon. It's not punishment. It's revelation. Stop talking in riddles. Kane shouted. You're done. You hear me? Done. He grabbed her by the arm and hauled her to the open hatch. The wind screamed. The pilot shouted something about altitude, but Kane didn't listen. His face was pure fury. Not justice. Not duty. Just rage. You think you can mess with my men? My mission. Nilla met his eyes. Calm. Certain. I think, she said softly, you already threw me once before. Kane froze. What? But she leaned closer, so he could hear her over the storm. And that's when you started falling. He shoved her hard. The others shouted. Myrea reached for her. Too late. And then Nilla was gone. Her body vanished into the rain. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the thundering wind and the ragged breath of 5 terrified officers. Then lightning cracked the sky, and in its flash, every face turned toward the window. Below them, suspended in the white blaze of the storm, Nilla's body wasn't tumbling. It was rising, her face turned upward, eyes open, lips curved in a faint smile. The light vanished as quickly as it came. The darkness swallowed her. The pilot's hands trembled over the controls. Sir, what did we just... Shut up, Kane muttered, voice hoarse. The helicopter climbed shakily toward the clouds. No one spoke for the rest of the flight. But as Myrea sat there, clutching her headset, she realized something she couldn't explain, something that made her stomach twist cold. In the glass of the cockpit window, the reflections of the crew stared back at her. 6 figures, not 5. And one of them, the one in the middle, was smiling. The storm had quieted, but the silence was worse for hours. The helicopter had drifted through a sea of low clouds, cut off from every signal. The radios hissed with dead air. The city lights below were gone, replaced by endless gray, the kind of emptiness that made direction meaningless. The fuel gauge blinked amber. The pilot, Lieutenant Reeves, hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. His knuckles were white on the controls. Every now and then, the compass would twitch, spin once, and then freeze again, always pointing nowhere. Captain Broderick Kane sat rigid beside him. eyes locked on the storm front ahead. The others, Myrea, Ortiz, towards his empty seat, and two remaining officers, sat in the cabin behind him. Their nerves stretched thin. It was 3:17 a.m. Control. This is Air Unit 31, Reeves said into his headset, voice trembling slightly. We've lost GPS and visual ground contact. Requesting emergency coordinates. Over. Static answered him. Then, faintly, Air Unit 31. 31. 1. The signal looped. His own voice echoed back, distorted and hollow. Reeves' hand shook. It's feeding back. But there's no repeater on this channel. Keep trying, Kane said sharply. The pilot switched frequencies. Emergency channel open. Do you copy? Do you copy? Copy. The echo came again, now layered, as though dozens of voices were whispering his words back. Male. Female. Some deeper, some stretched thin like tape warped by heat. Myrea leaned forward from the back. Sir, maybe we should land. We don't even know where we are anymore. Kane turned. His face was pale, the veins in his neck taut. We land when I say so. She stared back. We threw a woman out of this aircraft. Captain, you think maybe that's what this is? Kane's gaze hardened. She's dead. Then why does it sound like she's talking through your headset? The other officers exchanged looks. Nobody wanted to admit what they were hearing. The faint whispers that had begun threading through the static, calling their names. Myrea. Kane. Reeves. Reeves ripped the headset off. Jesus Christ. The cabin lights flickered, then steadied. Kane slammed his fist against the console. It's just interference. That's all. But Myrea was staring at the window. Her reflection looked wrong. It was her face. But the eyes, they weren't hers. They were watching her, studying her, the way Nilla had in those last moments before falling. Myrea blinked, and the reflection blinked a second delayed. Her breath caught. Ortiz? One of the officers asked. She shook her head. Nothing. I'm fine. But she wasn't. Something cold was settling behind her ribs. Not fear exactly, but recognition. They tried again to send a mayday. This time, Kane took the mic himself. Control. This is Captain Kane of Air Unit 31. We are experiencing severe communication malfunction. Requesting immediate radar lock. Over. A hiss. Then, faintly, her voice. You're not flying. Captain. Everyone froze. Myrea's hand flew to her mouth. Reeves went pale as chalk. Kane gripped the console so hard his knuckles turned white. Who is this? You threw me away. Remember. The voice wasn't over the radio anymore. It was inside the cabin. It came from everywhere. The air vents, the metal floor, even the vibration of the seats. The youngest officer, Hayes, tore off his harness. Nope, no way. This is not. The lights went out. Total black. Only the red emergency glow from the control panel painted their faces in pulses of crimson and shadow. The rotors hum slowed. Reeves shouted over the sound. Sir, we're losing power. Kane barked. Divert from the storm. Bring her steady. I'm trying. Then something flickered on the windshield. A faint silhouette. A face pale, wet, serene. Just inches from the glass, hovering in the slipstream outside. Her hair floated weightless. Her eyes locked directly on Kane. Dr. Nilla Pierce. The woman they'd thrown into the storm. Reeves screamed. The helicopter pitched hard left, nearly rolling. Pull up. Kane shouted. I can't. When the floodlights flickered back on, the glass was empty again. Only rain. The helicopter steadied. They all sat there, shaking, drenched in sweat despite the cold. Reeves was hyperventilating. She was there, Captain. I saw her. No, Kane said. You saw a reflection. Reflections don't smile back, sir. Myrea wiped her face with a trembling hand. It's not the storm. It's not tech failure either. Something's inside the system. Kane turned sharply. Don't start that supernatural crap. We're professionals. Myrea's voice cracked. We killed someone, Kane. Maybe she found a way to. He cut her off with a glare. Enough. He turned toward Reeves. Check the flight logs. Reeves hesitated. Sir, do it. The pilot scrolled through the onboard records, his fingers shaking. The logs flickered, timestamps repeating, overlapping. A dozen entries marked 3:17 a.m., every one of them identical except for one anomaly. An unmarked file at the bottom. No timestamp, no origin. Reeves clicked it open. The monitor went black. Then a single line appeared. Project Resonant Access granted. A series of images flashed rapidly. Brain scans, sonar-like waveforms, then Nilla's face. Her military ID.mi or EYA leaned closer. reading the file name aloud. Resonant Psychology Initiative. Kane frowned. What the hell is that? Reeves scrolled down. Paragraphs of dense jargon filled the screen, but one section was highlighted. Subject Nilla Pierce developed adaptive resonance fields, capable of memory synchronization between host frequencies. Program shut down following civilian test incident. Data classified under departmental authority. Subject marked for containment. Maria whispered, "She worked for us." Reeves' voice trembled. "And we killed her because she exposed it." Kane's expression hardened. "Shut that file down." But the text shifted on its own, rewriting before their eyes. Containment unsuccessful. Host field transfer in progress. Reeves slammed the keyboard. It's typing by itself. The lights dimmed again, and the sound of rotors deepened, the pitch lowering into a deep, vibrating hum that made the air feel heavy, almost liquid. Maria's vision blurred. For a split second, she wasn't in the helicopter anymore. She was somewhere else, standing in a sterile lab, surrounded by monitors and humming machines. Nilla stood across from her, speaking to a room of men in uniforms. "The mind doesn't die," Nilla was saying. "It migrates. Frequencies can be mapped. Memory is just resonance sustained in the right field." Then the vision snapped away. Myra gasped and clutched her head. "She's showing us things. Stop it," King growled. "Stop talking like she's." But then the helicopter's control stick moved. On its own, Reeves shouted, "Hands off. I'm not touching it." The stick jerked right, then left, adjusting course. "Autopilot's dead," Reeves said, panic rising. This thing's flying itself." Myra turned toward Kane. "You said she was dead, Captain." "You were wrong." The red light flashed again. A voice whispered through the cabin. "You shouldn't have thrown me away." Every instrument blinked to life simultaneously. Altitude, radar, even the broken GPS. But none of the readings made sense. The radar showed the helicopters. Same transponder code. Same ID. Air Unit 31 and Air Unit 31. Kane stared, jaw slack. "What the hell?" Reeves whispered, "It's us." Myra leaned over. "It's like we're tracking our own signal." A reflection. Then, on the radar, the second blip moved upward. Reeves' breath hitched. "It's gaining altitude." Myra looked out the side window and froze dot above them. Faint through the fog was another helicopter. Identical. Same markings. Same tail number. But the people inside, their reflections, weren't sitting still. They were watching. Every one of them was staring down into the real helicopter, eyes hollow, faces wet with rain. And standing at the open door of that mirrored aircraft was Nilla Pierce, calm, barefoot, hands uncuffed. Her lips moved, as though the storm swallowed her voice. Every speaker in the cockpit echoed her words perfectly. "I told you. You're not flying anymore." The helicopter jolted violently. Reeves screamed as the controls spun under his hands, unresponsive. Warning alarms blared, altitude falling fast. "Pull up. Pull up," Kane shouted. "I can't." The system's overriding. The red lights flared bright enough to blind them. For a heartbeat, they saw everything. The mirrored chopper above them. Their doppelgangers reaching down, Nilla between both crafts. Her arms spread wide like a conductor controlling two instruments at once. Then silence. The alarm stopped. The world went still. Reeves looked down at the controls. Every screen was blank. The engine hum was gone. But somehow, they were still in the air, floating. He whispered, "We're not descending. We're not moving." Kane's voice was hollow. "Then what are we?" Myra looked at the darkened window. Her reflection smiled back, but it wasn't her. "Passengers," it whispered. The storm had passed, but the air still felt charged, as if the sky hadn't decided whether to forgive them or finish what it started. The helicopter floated in eerie quiet, its rotors humming low, slicing through a layer of fog that seemed to go on forever. No city lights, no radio signal, no horizon, just endless gray. Captain Broderick Kane stood behind the pilot's seat, jaw clenched, watching the static-filled screens. The numbers blinked random digits. Altimeter, 0 feet. Yet through the side window, the world below stretched endlessly downward. A vast canopy of black-green forest. They weren't over the city anymore. They weren't anywhere that made sense. Something's wrong with the readings. Lieutenant Reeves muttered, "We're showing altitude 0, but we're not on the ground," said Officer Myra Ortiz, finishing his thought. "Yeah, we noticed." Her tone was brittle, strained. She'd stopped trying to hide her fear hours ago. The others were unraveling faster, their hands trembling. eyes darting from screen to screen like rats trapped in a maze. Kane leaned over the console. Reboot the navigation. Reeves hesitated. Sir, last time I tried that. Do it. Kane snapped. Reeves swallowed, typed a few commands, and hit enter. The monitors went black. For a heartbeat, the cabin went utterly still. Then a faint glow crawled across the center display, a blinking cursor, followed by a single line of text. Do you remember the fall? Reeves stared at it. Sir. Before anyone could respond, a file directory appeared. Hundreds of encrypted folders scrolling down the screen like falling rain. One folder at the bottom was marked in red, NYLA_Pierce_Protocol Myria. Felt a chill crawl up her spine. Don't open that. Kane ignored her. Open it. Reeves hesitated. Captain, open it. He clicked the file. The screen glitched, static bleeding across every monitor. Then a single video feed appeared, grainy footage, timestamped 2 years earlier. They saw a lab, white walls, machines humming. A woman in a government uniform stood in the center. Dr. Nilla Pierce. Her voice came through the speakers, calm and clipped, like she was giving a briefing. Today marks the first successful cognitive transference through resonance mapping. If the field holds, consciousness can persist beyond the physical. No parachute required. Kane's brow furrowed. What the hell does that mean? Nilla looked directly into the camera, straight into them. If you're watching this, she said softly, you killed me. The crew froze. Don't worry, she continued. It's not revenge. It's calibration. You can't drop someone out of the sky without learning what gravity really is. The feed distorted, her face fragmenting into glitchy frames. Then text replaced the image. The parachute protocol is active. Reeves slammed his palm against the console. What the hell is happening? The cabin lights flickered violently. The helicopter jolted, but the instruments still read altitude 0. Kane barked, hold it steady. I am holding it steady. Reeves yelled. The controls aren't responding. Outside, the floodlights flickered on by themselves, cutting through the fog. The world below came into view, a vast, dense forest swaying under an invisible wind. Nothing familiar. No roads, no cities, no civilization. Where the hell are we? One of the officers whispered. Myra pressed her face to the glass, scanning the horizon. This isn't the mainland, she said. We were over water 10 minutes ago. Kane's jaw tightened. Maybe the storm pushed us inland. No, Reeves said, eyes wide. That's impossible. We've been flying in circles. Look, he pointed at the radar. The same circular blip pulsing over and over, tracing their own path endlessly. They hadn't moved at all. Then a new sound joined the mechanical hum. A voice, faint, rhythmic, like breath over a microphone. They threw me from the sky once. Myra's eyes darted around. Did anyone else? Now I'll show them how it feels to fall. The cabin temperature dropped several degrees in seconds. Every screen went dark except one, the same message, repeated across the interface. You are falling. Kane slammed his hand down. This is a trick. A goddamn trick. But the helicopter wasn't moving. It was sinking. Not downward, but inward. The air felt heavier, thicker, like they were falling through the inside of a dream. The youngest officer, Hayes, started crying quietly. We're dead, aren't we? Shut your mouth, Kane barked. No one's dead. Not yet. Myra rounded on him. You threw her out of this aircraft. You made us do it. You said it was protocol. It was protocol. Kane snapped. Whose protocol? She shouted. Hers or yours? The silence that followed was worse than the shouting, because for the first time, even Kane didn't seem sure. The restraints on their seats clicked, once, twice, then locked automatically. Reeves tugged his harness. It's jammed. Kane's did the same. Manual override. He barked, but the mechanical locks refused to move. Each strap tightened like a slow constrictor around their chests. She's sealing us in. Myra whispered. Kane turned on her, voice sharp. Stop talking like she's alive. Myra stared him down. She's not alive, Captain. She's everywhere. The lights flickered again, only this time, they didn't come back. Darkness swallowed the cabin. Then, through the black, a soft white glow shimmered across the windshield. Not lightning, not reflection. A face, faint and luminous, projected against the glass. NYLA. But her expression wasn't angry. It was mournful. The parachute protocol was never meant for war. Her voice whispered through the comms. It was meant for survival. You made it about control. You tried to weaponize the fall. Her image blinked out. The cabin lights flared red. Reeves screamed as the control stick yanked itself backward, sending the helicopter into a sharp tilt. The forest below surged closer, trees twisting into green shadows, altitudes dropping. He yelled. It already was 0. Myra shouted back. The numbers spun wildly now, negative altitudes flashing across the screen. 50 for feet, minus 276 feet, minus 999 feet. What the hell does that mean? It means we're below ground level, Reeves said hoarsely. We're underground. Kane's voice cracked for the first time. That's impossible. But the forest below was gone. In its place stretched a vast field of gray fog, rippling like water. And then, a figure fell through it. Myra gasped. Torres. He was falling headfirst, arms spread, the missing rookie from before. Torres. Kane shouted, "Pull your chute." But the man didn't respond. He didn't even scream. He simply fell, and then vanished into the mist. No sound. No impact. Just gone. Myra whispered, not splattered, not broken, just gone. The silence after his disappearance was absolute. Even the helicopter's hum died. Then a new voice filled the cabin, Nilla's again, quiet, calm, patient. You keep trying to understand fall and flight as opposites. They're not. They're the same act, just seen from different directions. Kane trembled, his hands gripping the edge of the console. What do you want from us? To remember. Her voice shifted, no longer through the speakers, but inside their heads. You built systems that buried the truth. You silenced the ones who saw the cracks. You thought falling was death. It isn't. It's data. It's transfer. It's freedom. The monitors came alive again, showing their own faces on loop, grainy and distorted. But the eyes staring back weren't theirs. Each reflection moved out of sync, lagging by half a second. Their mouths forming silent words. None of them spoke. Reeves broke first. He tore at his harness, screaming, "I'm getting out. I'm not dying in this coffin. Don't." Myra shouted. But he slammed the release on the side door. The air exploded inward. The suction ripped through the cabin, tearing loose paper, debris, and Reeves himself. He flung out into the open sky, vanishing instantly into the fog. Myra screamed. The door swung wildly, banging against the fuselage, then sealed itself shut with a hiss. The cabin steadied. Now only 3 remained: Kane, Myra, and the last surviving officer, Hayes, whose eyes were glazed and unfocused. Kane's voice was hoarse. "We're losing everyone. What is this? What the hell is this?" Myra's voice shook. "She told us. Transference. She's moving through frequencies. Through us." Kane slammed his fist against the glass. "We're not computers." "No," Myra said softly. "We're conductors." Hayes began to laugh suddenly, high-pitched, broken. "You hear that? She's in the air. In the hum. She's flying us. She's flying us." Kane turned to him, ready to shout, but stopped, because Hayes was no longer in his seat. The harness hung empty, still locked out, and in his place, faintly, the red glow of the control panel shimmered with the outline of a human figure. Flickering like static. Kane stepped back, whispering, "God help us." Myra shook her head. "He's not flying us anymore, Captain." "She is." The helicopter began to tilt forward, smooth, deliberate, outside the windshield. The fog parted, revealing a shape below, a clearing in the forest, perfectly circular, lights glowing faintly from the ground like an enormous landing pad, but there was no base, no building, just earth, illuminated from within. "Where's that light coming from?" Kane asked. Myra looked down, realization dawning in her eyes. "It's us." And she was right. The light was their own reflection, the helicopter projected downward, as if the sky itself were a mirror, and below, in that mirrored craft, Nilla Pierce sat calmly at the pilot's seat, the real one. Myra whispered, "She's bringing us home." The controls moved on their own again, steady and sure, aligning them with the reflection below. Their descent felt endless, smooth as silk. The hum rose higher, vibrating through their bones. Not pain, not fear, just resonance. Kane's voice broke. "What happens when we touch dew?" The helicopter descended through a bruised sky, limping toward the glimmering grid of the city. Below, skyscrapers cut through the fog like broken teeth. The storm had thinned to a cold drizzle, but the air still tasted metallic, like the aftermath of lightning. Inside the cabin, Captain Broderick Kane and Officer Myra Ortiz were the only ones left. The others were gone, swallowed by the storm, by the fog, by whatever Nilla Pierce had become. The instruments still glowed red, though none of them worked. The altimeter looped between 0 and infinity, spinning endlessly. The radio crackled with whispers that sounded like breathing. Kane's hands trembled on the controls. "We're losing altitude." Maria gave a hollow laugh. "We've been losing everything since the moment we threw her out." Kane shot her a glare. "You think I wanted this? You think I enjoyed it? You didn't hesitate," she said quietly. "That's worse." He turned back to the windshield. The city lights pulsed faintly through the rain, like a dying heart. "Orders are orders," he muttered. "I did what needed to be done." "Orders don't make you innocent," she said. "They just make you obedient." He snapped. "You don't know what it's like to be responsible for men's lives, and you don't know what it's like to live with their ghosts." The words hung in the air, heavy as the storm clouds outside. Neither spoke after that. The helicopter shuddered, creaking under invisible pressure. A warning alarm wailed somewhere deep in the fuselage, then cut off suddenly, as if silenced by something unseen. Kate stared at the console. "She's still in here." Maria looked up. "Nilla," he nodded slowly. "Every time we change altitude, the power stabilizes for a second. Then it dies again, like she's balancing us." Maria's voice softened. "Maybe she's deciding whether we deserve to land." The comm system flickered, and then Nilla's voice filled the cabin. Not loud, not shrill, soft, precise, terrifyingly calm. "You talk about orders as if they erased the fingerprints." Kane froze. "She's dead. Death is a place you put other people," Nilla replied. "Not me." The floodlights on the nose of the chopper flickered on, illuminating the reflection of the city below. Wet streets, flashing sirens, the blue-red pulse of emergency lights that never seemed to get closer. "You took everything from me," Nilla said, her voice vibrating through the metal hull. "Now I'll take gravity from you." The helicopter jerked violently. The horizon flipped out suddenly. The world turned upside down. The cabin filled with screams, only two of them human. The rest came from the metal itself, bending and tearing under forces that shouldn't exist. The city was above them now, the clouds below. The rain rose upward in streaks like silver threads returning to heaven. Kane's grip tore free from the controls. His seatbelt snapped with a metallic crack. The cabin door ripped open, wind roaring in like an angry god. "Kane!" Maria shouted, reaching for him, but he was already sliding toward the open door, boots scraping uselessly against the floor. He grabbed the edge of the seat, his face twisted in terror. "Help me!" For a heartbeat, she thought about it, about grabbing his hand, pulling him back. But then she saw something in his eyes. Not fear, not remorse, just the same cold authority that had ordered Nilla's execution. He'd thrown her out without a second thought. Now, the sky was claiming its balance. Maria let go. Kane's scream tore through the storm as he vanished into the dark, falling upward, arms flailing. Swallowed by the clouds, his echo faded slowly, like a tape rewinding itself into silence. Then the helicopter righted itself. The engines purred, soft and calm. The alarm stopped. The interior lights brightened, washing the cabin in a pale blue glow. Maria floated in her seat, unstrapped, suspended inches above the floor. Her hair drifted around her face, as though she were underwater. Gravity had forgotten her. Through the windshield, the courthouse appeared below, the same courthouse where Dr. Nilla Pierce had testified years ago. The place where she had warned them all that her research could rewrite the human mind, where the government had labeled her a threat, where Kane and his team had dragged her away in handcuffs. The helicopter descended smoothly, lowering itself toward the marble steps. It touched down so gently the landing skids didn't even creak. Maria's boots touched the floor. The rotor slowed. The rain softened. Silence. For a long moment, Maria just sat there, breathing hard. The blue light pulsed through the cockpit like a heartbeat. She reached for the door handle. It opened easily when she stepped outside. The world felt different, quieter, weightless. The city was empty. No people, no traffic, only the hum of power lines and the whisper of wind through wet streets. But then, far off, sirens began to wail. Red and white lights shimmered between buildings. Emergency crews were coming. Maria turned back to the helicopter. The cockpit was empty. No bodies, no blood, not even a trace of Kane. The seats looked unused, pristine, as if no one had ever flown there at all. Only one thing remained, a faint, glowing fingerprint on the glass. Nilla's. Maria touched it. The glass vibrated beneath her fingers. For a moment, she saw images, flashes of Nilla's life like shards of broken mirrors. The courtroom, the lab, the storm, the fall dot, and beneath it all, the same whisper that had haunted the crew since the beginning. There is no parachute for justice. The first responders arrived minutes later. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. They fanned out across the courthouse plaza, weapons drawn, shouting orders that echoed uselessly through the empty streets. When they found Myrea, she was standing barefoot in the rain, looking up at the sky as if listening for something. Her uniform was soaked, but her hands were clean, her wrists unmarked, her expression strangely serene. "Mom," one officer said, lowering his weapon. "Are you hurt?" She turned to him slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly, a soft, unnatural blue, like light seen through deep water. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "It's over." They wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, guided her toward an ambulance. She didn't resist. She didn't look back. But as the news crews arrived, drawn by the crash alert, cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions. Lights flashed through the rain. One journalist leaned forward, voice trembling. "Officer Ortiz, what happened up there? Where's the rest of your team?" Myrea looked at the helicopter, then at the courthouse beyond it. The building that had buried the truth, that had sentenced a scientist to silence for speaking out against her own creation. Her voice, when it came, was calm, almost gentle. "They thought I needed a parachute," she said. She paused, the faintest smile touching her lips. They were wrong. That night, the footage went viral. A helicopter that appeared to land itself, a lone survivor with glowing eyes, a wreck with no bodies inside. The city called it a miracle. The department called it a tragedy. The government called it classified. But among those who watched the video, those who looked closely, some noticed something else. As the news camera panned across the helicopter's shattered windshield, lightning flickered in the clouds above. For a split second, in the reflection, a woman's face appeared, calm, smiling, falling upward. Weeks later, Myrea sat alone in a recovery ward overlooking the city. She hadn't spoken much since the crash. The doctors said she was in shock. The psychiatrist said she was delusional. But every time she closed her eyes, she heard the hum, a deep, resonant vibration beneath her skin. The same hum that had filled the helicopter. The same hum Nilla had spoken about in her files, resonance frequencies bridging consciousness, breaking the barrier between memory and matter. Sometimes, when the monitors in the room flickered, Myrea swore she could see Nilla sitting in the reflection of the window, just watching, never speaking, just waiting. One night, Myrea asked the empty room, "Are you still here?" And the lights flickered once in response. She smiled. Good, because the truth was, Myrea didn't want to be free of her. Not entirely. Something inside her had shifted, like a balance restored. For years, she had served a system that decided who lived and who vanished, who was innocent and who was disposable. But Nilla had rewritten that equation. She hadn't taken vengeance. She'd taken weight, the crushing force of guilt that had kept Myrea chained to her badge, her orders, her silence. Now, there was only calm when she finally left the hospital. The reporters waited outside again. They wanted answers, confessions, closure. Officer Ortiz, one called. "Do you have anything to say to the families of your fallen colleagues?" She looked up at the overcast sky. The clouds moved differently now, not drifting, but pulsing like breath. "I do," she said softly. "Tell them she landed." The reporters frowned. Who landed? But Myrea was already walking away, her footsteps soundless on the wet pavement. Above, the thunder rolled once, distant and low, like laughter beneath the storm. In a secured government lab states away, a technician reviewed classified flight logs recovered from the helicopter's black box. The data didn't make sense. The craft had recorded negative altitudes, impossible pressure readings, and one final transmission just seconds before the crash. He slowed the tape, isolated the last line, and increased the volume. It was a voice, calm, certain, inhumanly steady. "The fall is not punishment, it's return." The technician frowned, heart pounding. "Who said that?" The speakers crackled, and then, faintly, came the sound of wind rushing through open sky, followed by a single breath, a woman's breath, and then silence.